Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar. My name is Michael Nelson. I think I know each and every one of you that I see so far on the call coming in. Today's webinar is on Huntress, which is one of the two new applications in our new security suite stack that you got the email about that we're doing as kind of our required, better, and best options. This is the first webinar that we're doing. Today, we're going to be talking about Titan HQ. The next one in 2 weeks is going to be on Titan HQ, which is going to be for the web filtering DNS. There'll be another one coming out in early December. We're going to be doing another webinar on what you need to know and questions about cyber liability insurance. Just to back up for a second, when Hector and I were doing the research on what products we wanted to use, Huntress was very high on our list. We chose them as one of the two main ones to do in this rollout as our required rollout, because we really felt that it brought a lot to the table to keeping our partners and your machines more secure and keeping the threat vector at a much lower level. We are going to make this as non-technical as possible. Which is awesome because there is a lot of geek that goes behind this. I want to introduce Craig Landreneau from Huntress, who is going to actually be doing the presentation because it's their product. He's the manager of their partner channel, and Becky Teal is also from Huntress. If you have questions, because everybody's on mute, there is a questions button on your on the GoToWebinar. You should have a little question. I'll be paying attention for questions. Just type in any questions that you have there, and we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and ask Craig at the appropriate time. So let me see. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Craig, and he's going to start the webinar.
Awesome, I appreciate it. Let me share my screen out here. Awesome. So as Michael said, then I'm Craig Landreneau. I'm with Huntress on our partner success team. Today we're going to talk just a little bit about Huntress, how it's different from a lot of the other security products you have, and where it fits in your security stack, why it's important to a good secure security posture. We are going to try to keep it at a pretty high level. And again, to back up Michael's point from earlier, if there are any points on here that you have questions you feel like we're going a little too in depth or anything like that, feel free to ask in the chat and we'll address those as they come up. So our mission at Huntress is to provide real cybersecurity threat hunting for 99% of companies who currently aren't doing it. A few quick facts to get us started. Huntress is a security platform that provides what we call persistence threat hunting as a service. It puts us into a broader managed detection and response category as a software. We provide the security expertise and we deliver reports that are digestible for IT teams without a bunch of unnecessary alerts. Some numbers on Huntress right now. We currently serve more than 25,000 customers, 1,800 plus partners, and have over 500,000 agents deployed. We're actually rapidly approaching the 1 million agents deployed mark. So here's what we'd like you to walk away from this session with today. One thing is Huntress hunts for persistent threats that your preventative software consistently misses. And we'll dive a little bit into what a persistent threat is in just a moment. Huntress is also complementary to your existing security stack. We're not coming and saying we're the end all be all and you need to replace everything that you're doing with Huntress, because that wouldn't be a good security measure either. It's important to have security across the board, and Huntress is just one piece of that puzzle, one piece of the equation there. And then also, Huntress is purposefully affordable in accordance with our mission, as we mentioned earlier, to provide security for the 99% of companies who can't afford all of the proper controls. So here's some data from Coveware, which is a company who specializes in helping companies recover from ransomware, with some interesting statistics. Here you can see that the most common ransomware attack vectors are RDP and phishing. They take the top spots for attack vectors an overwhelming majority of the time, especially for smaller clients. This really highlights the need for better security practices and software across the board. We often get objections from small businesses that, well, we're not really a threat. What do we have a value to offer to an attacker? It turns out that it doesn't matter what vertical you're in, what size you are, ransomware games tend to be opportunistic. You can see on this chart that the professional services sector accounts for more than 25% of targets by ransomware over time. We'll loop back around to ransomware in a bit, but let's discuss why you should care about hunting for persistence in the first place. It's because persistence is the most important and the ubiquitous part of the attack chain that people typically don't really understand. Here's a quote from security researcher John Hammond. He estimates that over 90% of all domain-wide ransomware attacks include persistence as a part of the first steps in the attack chain. But this is a known thing. Why aren't we all doing something about it? And frankly, that's because expelling persistence has to involve humans who actually know how to find it and how to deal with it. Gartner points out in their writings on threat hunting, effective threat hunting is incredibly rare due to its reliance on uniquely skilled personnel. Only a few companies in the defense industrial base and financial services boast productive threat hunting teams that deliver results. So what you have is, in reality, less than 1% of companies on the planet have threat hunters on staff who can go toe-to-toe with talented attackers. So without those threat hunters on your team, how should we try and prevent domain-wide attacks to the fullest? Well, we should be creating policies from something like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. This is a framework that's provided by NIST, who is one of the standards in the industry, and they really show split into 5 different categories: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So you can see here all of these things that we should be doing if resources weren't a concern. However, what are we actually doing in this space? This is usually a security stack that we usually have a security stack that looks something along the lines of this, where most of the budget is spent on preventative measures like AV, firewalls, and then on recovery measures like backup and disaster recovery solutions. So why don't more companies perform in the detect response category? Well, Huntress does. For one thing, it's expensive, and you have to actually know what you're doing to operate in that space. All of the security software tools currently that are automated are preventative automation. Huntress is post-prevention. So what we're doing is hunting for attackers who have already made it past your automated protections and have already compromised your system. When you think about it from that perspective, it's obvious that humans have to be in the loop. So as you move through the NIST framework, technology gives way to people in terms of degree of dependency. Specifically with the detect, respond, and recover categories, you can't take humans out of the process and then expect positive results. Relying on just software as your only method of detection and response has the exact same limitations as preventative solutions. So don't let a label fool you. Unless humans are involved in the detection and response, what you really have is a pre-compromised software tool. And when what most of us need is qualified threat operations engineers who can hunt for, find, and expel the advanced persistent threats that preventative software doesn't have a chance at stopping. Expelling previously unknown threats gives organizations a second chance at stopping business-altering breaches before the attackers can cause any real damage. And you might be thinking, well, we pay a lot for a next-gen AV or an EDR, and they tell me I'm covered from everything. And yes, a lot of companies do have marketing claims like this, but if these claims were true, you'd be protected from everything. There'd be no point to worrying about having detection, response, or recovery measures in place because there wouldn't be any attacks that were a concern. But we all know that isn't necessarily the reality of the situation. Case in point, in early March, malicious web shells were getting dropped on unpatched on-prem Exchange servers where antivirus and EDR were installed. They weren't alerting on that incident though. This type of thing happens all the time where it'll make it past those automated security layers. And if you don't have some type of team or software that's reviewing after that breach, it can become a major problem for you. Huntress, in this instance, was all over this, sent critical reports to our customers, and then called customers urging them to patch. What all offensive security experts know, and therefore all attackers also know, is that security prevention software tools miss well-known threats about 50% of the time. Despite what AV companies might lead you to believe, this isn't a new problem. For generations now, the antivirus industry has focused their efforts on building better mousetraps, essentially, and spent billions of dollars advertising to make you believe the newest trap is worth what they're charging. If you put out maps, you'll definitely catch some mice. But what happens once the mouse is in the house already? The smart mice will still find a way to get the cheese, whether there's a trap or not. So what you really need is an exterminator to hunt down and destroy the nest, remove their footholds into your home. So while preventative security software doesn't find or expel persistent footholds, Huntress hunts down and helps exterminate the attacker persistence that your preventative tools aren't able to detect. When your antivirus blocks something, that's great. It's done its job exactly as it's intended. But we're here to help find and expel threats that it's never been aware of because it can't detect them. It's looking at a different layer of processes than we are. What you see here is a snippet from the MITRE ATT&CK enterprise matrix. It highlights a lot of many of the attacker tactics, techniques, and procedures that they use. The threat hunting that our founders did while they were serving our country at the NSA had no limitations. Their hunts went wherever their hypotheses took them, but they also had all of the resources of the US government at their disposal. So in order to productize threat hunting and make it affordable, we had to narrow our focus. From their experience, they know that as an attacker, if your persistent access to an environment is removed, meaning that your access won't require a simple reboot or a password change, well, then the jig's up. Your cover's blown. It's time to move on to an easier target. You can see here a typical attacker journey. After the break-in, establishing a persistent foothold is going to be the attacker's top priority. They go to great lengths to keep it hidden because without it, the rest of the attack falls apart. Not often can an attacker go from recon to domain-wide payload execution without detection in one single session. So moving a little bit further and talking back about persistence, if you were to search for a definition of persistence, you'll get a pretty clear description from MITRE. Adversaries use persistence to keep access to systems across restarts, changed credentials, and other interruptions that could cut off their access. Techniques used for persistence include any access, action, or configuration changes that let them maintain their foothold on systems, such as replacing or hijacking legitimate code or adding startup code. But how many of these can there be? These should be relatively easy to spot, right? Well, there are hundreds of auto-starting components of Windows, which are commonly referred to as auto runs, and these are running on your PCs right now. They're virtually never investigated. From an attacker's point of view, that's great. They can play in there for months and you'd never even know it. But it also works from a hunting perspective. If you're one of the few humans on the planet who know what to look for, you can hunt for imposter auto runs without understanding the organizational context. And there are always plenty to hunt through. It's not uncommon to see anywhere from 800 to 2,000 auto running components of Windows per operating system at any given point in time. So where are all these auto running components coming from? Well, anytime you sit through a software installation, you might see something like this with a progress bar, and under that progress bar, the installation is running all sorts of processes, creating new files, folders, scheduled tasks, run keys, and services. These are all normal parts of using computers. Every month, you might also have Windows running an update on your machine, and dozens of new auto-running items are created. While auto runs are a necessary part of using a computer, not all auto runs are good. Unfortunately, if you click on the wrong link in an email online or run the wrong installer, that can add startup code to your PC as well. And those auto runs aren't as easy to find or get rid of. Again, as we said earlier, you might be thinking I have an expensive EDR for this, I'm covered. And preventative software tools are focused on blocking things that show up on top of Windows, though, things that are written to disk.
Hey, Craig.
Yes.
Let me just pop in here for a second. When you're talking about EDR, just a couple of terms here, just because they may not be familiar. The AV is your antivirus. The NGAV stands for what?
NGAV is going to be next gen antivirus. It's the same thing. It's just a lot of them that have more functionality in their how a lot of them are marketing their solutions now.
And then the EDR is what we're actually talking about here, which is the endpoint detection and response.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Hey, our tagline is "We speak human." So if we're getting outside of the human, I'll do a quick interrupt.
I appreciate that. So what you have here is all those preventative security tools that we talked about, like antivirus, next-gen antivirus. All of those are focused on blocking things that show up on top of your Windows system that are written to disk. So advanced threats have evolved to live in the Windows operating system itself, in the registry, in the memory, in places where preventative software tools can't block things without risking corrupting and shutting down the operating system that they're sitting on top of. And of course, if they're shutting down that system, the first thing you're probably going to do is want to uninstall that particular software because it's going to corrupt your entire system. While most antivirus providers won't take that risk. They simply whitelist the entire category of underlying OS components, which is what makes it a perfect place for attackers to play. These type of attacks can take on multiple forms, sometimes even as simple as a phishing email that queues up background processes. Even the act of opening a file or clicking on a link can initiate a malicious process. And the impact can be huge, even if there's not a ransom paid for encryption. This particular screenshot here is taken from a real-life example from a customer of an MSP partner of ours. The customer was a 28-employee construction company, and had the MSP not had Huntress to send them the report on the initial TrickBot infection they were being impacted by, this could have easily have led to a domain-wide ransomware for that organization, would have easily cost them over $200,000. The downtime cost isn't always about just the ransom. It's also about how many hours you're losing of just productivity and how much it costs to restore and regain your reputation. Instead, this particular instance took under 10 minutes to remediate, and Huntress was able to help prevent this incident from becoming a widespread breach. Huntress is a combination of software, proprietary detections, and incredibly rare people. Once installed, the Huntress agent gathers information about every single auto-starting component on the Windows system. It uploads it to the Huntress cloud every 15 minutes, allowing us to monitor incremental changes over time. When we process that data first through a proprietary detection layer to find only known to Huntress footholds, enabled by results from previous hunts. Then we have, as we've mentioned, our incredibly rare individuals on our threat ops team who diligently hunt through all unknown or otherwise suspicious auto runs to find attacker persistence dwelling in your systems. When they do, we send out a detailed incident report to your email or ticketing system with the relevant remediation steps. So using Huntress is essentially outsourcing the detection and response categories to a group of offensive hackers that give you a second chance at stopping incidents on your endpoints that make it past your protections before they can become a widespread breach. Our founders, Kyle, Chris, and John, met during their time in the intelligence community. It was their job during their decade tenure at the NSA to carry out extremely sophisticated cyber warfare on the targets they were assigned. They helped create a lot of the exploits and persistent techniques that now they're helping Huntress customers expel from their systems today. Our founders' offensive expertise behind our threat operations team is what really empowers their ability to hunt at scale. Here's an example of what our deliverable would look like. Huntress provides an incident report that will show exactly what issue was detected, exactly where that issue was detected. It'll show other security products installed on the device, not to shame any security products or anything. As we mentioned, they're just looking at different things than we are. And it'll also show information about persistent footholds themselves, which is incorporated back by Huntress back into the product to help us find these threats more quickly in the future. Then we've also taken it a step further. We've added an easy button basically, so that you can click here to review the remediation plan and let us run it on your behalf. If you were to click approve, the Huntress agent will be tasked to automatically perform those actions with their next process run.
And Craig, let me just jump in here a second. So just so you all know, this is what we do for you. So any of these alerts come to our team, who is going to go in there and take care of the remediation.
Precisely, like Huntress generally runs silently in the background. Any of these alerts will go to your MSP, and so they'll manage those for you. As far as any of the end users are concerned, you probably won't even ever know anything happened unless you're contacted by your one of your security experts. That's how pain-free and hands-off it generally is for our customers. And just to reiterate, like we said earlier, we do find things that bypass every antivirus out there. CrowdStrike's an example, Sentinel-1's an example. Here's one with Sophos. We could name all these and show you redacted reports where we're cleaning up what's being missed by preventative tools. Like I said, the point here isn't to shame or belittle those particular companies or tools. It's just to highlight there's consistently problems which are missed by those tools, and you do need another layer in your security stack to account for that. And that's not all we do. While attackers are out there evolving their tactics, we're also evolving our platform to help better hunt them. In addition to Huntress for persistent footholds, we also scan endpoints for open and misconfigured ports, like RDP, to reduce the overall attack surface. We have the agent deploy ransomware canary files. They're small hidden files that the agent monitors for more early detection and faster response to ransomware incidents. We offer host isolation that blocks incoming and outgoing network activity on infected hosts in order to minimize impact in the case of an attack. And we have a managed antivirus service that makes the native version of Microsoft Defender usable at scale. So all of this is just to, as we're further expanding our services, keeping aligned with the Huntress model of being able to respond effectively, help you respond effectively to all of these more pervasive threats that we're seeing in the industry today. And with that, I will turn it back over to Michael to see if we have any questions.
All righty, thank you very much for that, Craig. Again, for the people that are having security discussions scheduled and coming up with us, there's a lot of information, obviously. That's why I wanted to bring the experts in. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute everybody. If you have a speaker or if you have a microphone, you can actually ask questions. You can also type questions into the question bar. Does anybody have a question on any of these? Again, there was, like the meetings that we're having with you, there's a lot of information that you're kind of drinking from a fire hose. The things that have changed in the world, especially in the last year, have just become scary. Again, this is why we're looking to expand the security stack and have Huntress, the antivirus, the firewalls, all of the things that we've been doing for you for years have been what we can do the best in class and keep it at an affordable price. This new security stack is, again, bringing in a new kind of what we're calling a depth of defense. So it's one more tool to add on to the security stack that we have for you. So any questions? Oh, come on, we got to have one of you out there with questions. Again, all you have to do is click in. Will this add additional security to emails? Craig, are you still with me?
Sorry, I was on mute there, yeah. So what it's doing, it doesn't necessarily add additional security to email, because what it's doing is it's looking, like we said, at that operating system level of your computer. What it does do, because email is a very common delivery mechanism for phishing emails, things like that, for a common entry point for attacks. What it does is whenever you get any of those emails, you accidentally click the wrong link, you download the wrong file, something along those lines, those processes just running in the background that would create the access mechanism for them to be on your system undetected, that's what we're looking at. So more so than looking at specifically the delivery method for how they're getting into the system, we're just making sure that we're cutting off their access into the system.
And that actually brings up a really good point, because one of the things we're also talking about in the security meetings that we're having with our partners is the Microsoft licensing. So one of the things that we're recommending is that every account has what's called advanced threat protection turned on, which does attachment scanning, advanced phishing, and it does email link protection. So if they do click on that link, the goal is it'll be caught first by there. But again, this really plays into this depth of defense. There's tools that Microsoft have that are built in to try to stop things. I think a lot of you have heard me talk about 0-day before. It's when it first comes out that there's really little to no defenses against it. So if we've got the Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection turned on and it still gets past that, that is one layer of the defense that we have. That's where Huntress comes in, is before that can get a persistent foothold, that's how that part gets stopped. So again, the goal is there's layers, and if one doesn't catch it, the next one will. We have another question. What happens if a phishing email does get through and an employee starts clicking on the provided links? So if you have the advanced threat protection, that should stop with the links in the email. What happens when you click on that link is it will go to the database that Microsoft has of bad, evil actors, and it should stop it there. If again, it's much earlier or closer to that 0-day where that just got launched, and they click on it and they allow something evil to come into the machine, now that's why, and the AV doesn't catch it, now we have Huntress to go out and hunt for it. Does that answer your question, Carla? All righty. Anybody else have questions for us? Reminder, okay, remind when this will take place. So we're officially launching this on November 15th. We've actually already started installing some of this to some of our partners. We've seen and we've already caught some things that showed up and were able to be blocked. I have a question. Do you know what the installation process will be like? Yeah, Sierra, this is going to be in the background. This will not interrupt your users in any way, shape, or form. It will not even be visible to them. It will not require a reboot. This is just going to be pushed out in the background. Your users won't notice it. They won't see it. They won't even know about it. How will it impact business operations? It will not impact your business operations, period. This is going to be, again, like I said, installed in the background. We want to keep you secure. And one of the things that when you came on, if you came on with Jack or you came on with me as a partner back before Jack came on to do business development, one of the things we talked about is making technology a simple tool with the goal of making you more productive, making you more profitable. So the last thing we want to do is introduce a program that's going to interrupt your productivity. All right, any other questions? Okay, Craig and I will hang out for a few more minutes. This will also be online. Once I get the recording from this, we're going to put it online on our YouTube channel. Just a quick shout out on that. If you go in and you Google search for TLC Tech YouTube, we've got a YouTube channel. We've got, we'll be having these product webinars on there. We're also just doing a new thing called How Do I, which are little 5-minute vignette videos or less answering how do I. One of them is how do I send a secure email? How do I change the background in Teams? These kind of things. This will also be up there on the YouTube channel. Any other questions? Okay, so that'll take care of this. Again, Craig and I will hang out in case there's any last minute questions that show up. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate you understanding that security is a critical part of us being successful with you. So thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye.